Hello, Hester. I miss you. I don't know if she can.
Evan, I've still got two things in my car for you. Two butterfly plant markers. I,
Okay.
I never
Well,
see you.
I'm sure I'll see you sometime.
Yeah. I don't know. Did this supposed to start at 7? I lost my notes.
Yes, it is at 7.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're on because I've been thinking about you and wondering how you were doing right now.
Doing very well. So you
Yeah.
can see my two new babies on the picture.
I saw those. I wondered if they were a special friend of yours.
Yeah, they're my two new adoptions. One of my friends had an accidental litter, so I took two of them from her.
Oh, how cute.
Yeah, they're fun. I've never had rabbits before, so it's very different.
Rabbits are an interesting pet. They can be very loving and really have a good personality, and they can be a little bit well, they're funny. I had one when I was teaching that Thumper. We loved it. The kids all loved Thumper, but one weekend a horrible storm came through that night, and I was going to take it home for the weekend, but I but the storm got so bad I couldn't take the cage to the car. So I knew the custodian was coming the next day and would feed and water them. But I left them sitting in the hallway with lots of food and water. Well, when I came Monday, they had plenty of food and water. They weren't hurting, but they were mad at us for doing it. And the silly thing, every time you'd go close to the cage, he would turn his back to the class and thump his feet. It was
Yeah.
so funny. The kids got quite a kick out of him. So have fun.
Yes, thank you.
And we had one guy who was a book author. He wrote um, he wrote books about his rabbit traveling around the world, around the states, and he always would take this bunny with him when he'd go to reading conferences, and the little bunny would autograph his books by taking a bite on the corner of a page. And the Humane Society made him stop because they said that was not right. He should not have a bunny out like that.
Oh,
But he was very, very good taking care of them and everything. But anyway, he didn't want to fight it, so he quit. But rabbits can be a lot of fun.
yeah, they're pretty funny.
Yeah. But have you been doing anything at the Nature Center lately?
No, I haven't. I do the Fort Worth Botanic Garden and Britt, and then I'm doing the White Settlement Monarch Way Station.
Oh, that's enough. Yeah.
What are you doing still?
Well, I haven't done much. We're not working the greenhouse right now. And
Oh,
so I've been doing some work with the master gardeners with the timekeeping and listening to a lot of programs.
yes.
But that's about it. Hello, David and Carol. I see you guys are early birds too.
Hello, how are y'all?
Doing
All is
good.
good.
Hi, Hester.
Hello,
Hi.
Carol.
Yeah,
Hello.
I love your little
Oh
bunnies.
my gosh, I'm so in love.
Now, are those adults or are they bunnies?
No, they're 8 weeks old.
Oh, wow. Gosh, they're so cute.
They're hilarious.
They look like something you can just really snuggle with.
Yeah, they're not so snuggly just yet. The black one, is more tolerant of me than the little girl.
Well, they have different personalities too. Um, my son had one that he had a guinea pig, a rabbit, a dog, and a cat, and they all ate out of the same bowl. He
Oh,
has he has a picture of them all sitting at their bowl, eating together. And I don't know how they chose what they were going to eat out of that bowl, but it was so funny.
Yeah, because that's all kinds of different food.
Oh yeah, he would just put it all in the same bowl, and they'd all sit around by their favorite one of the items in the bowl.
That's hysterical. That's like sometimes I see on these YouTubes and whatnot, like a donkey's in love with
Oh yes.
some other, a rabbit or something, and they're lifetime partners. And
Well, and animals will make strange partnerships.
yes, they do.
When I was a kid, we had a collie dog that we were in Texarkana, and one time it snowed really quite heavily. And my mom, when she went out to the back porch to bring the dog to get the dog food, when the dog stood up, 5 cats fell off. The cats had all piled on top of the dog to stay warm.
See, back then we should have had YouTube or videos
Oh
to
yeah.
pictures of that kind of thing. Oh well, now's our second chance.
Yep.
And Avon, I love your American pelicans.
oh yeah, that was amazing.
You must have an outrageous camera or lens.
I don't. I have just a real simple point and shoot Nikon. Yeah, I just lucked out that they were close enough that I could get them. It does have a zoom, but it's not a high-powered lens by any means.
Hmm. Well, you take pretty awesome pictures. I know that you've contributed some of your work to the Master Naturalist photo contest from time to time.
Yeah.
I hope you're planning on doing that again this year.
Oh yeah.
So I guess the native prairie, or is there any hikes or anything planned? Nothing?
I
No,
don't know.
It's too cold right now, of course.
I think Michelle will probably go a little bit into the schedule, but there's a potential hike in March at Benbrook,
Hmm.
and there's a Prairie Seekers training out at the Dixon Ranch
Mhm.
again in May, and we're talking about a few other potential hikes. But yeah, in fact, that's kind of the focus in 2022. We'd rather do more hiking and less zooming.
Did
Yes.
they do the hike on New Year's Day um,
Handy.
at Tandy Hills?
I think they
It
what Don did this year was kind of do it yourself kind of thing. I don't know. When I looked at his website, it looked like you just sort of just decided over a Saturday or Sunday which day, what
Yeah.
time and place you wanted to go to.
That's what I saw, and I didn't know if there was anything other than that.
Not to my knowledge, but I have not been out there since they bought the what is the name of that?
Broadcast Hill.
Telegraph Hill.
Yeah, telegraph.
Broadcast Hill.
Broadcast Hill.
There
Wrong
you
word.
go, Kate. I haven't been out there to discover that part of the now. I need to do that because it's just almost doubled in size since they've done that. On
And I
this-
understand they're making new trails as well.
Yeah,
Yes,
I saw that.
on the website, he says for the New Year's Day and the day after to plan 2 to 3 hours to be out.
Wow,
Yeah,
nice.
that's sweet. Very fortunate to have that extra. Other than that, I've just been hiking Fort Worth Nature Center and River Legacy, that's all that's kind of available for cold and wet.
Yeah.
It'll be spring before we know it.
Yeah, I can't wait. I just hope we get some moisture.
We're desperate for some rain.
Yes. Yes, I spent a lot of time spreading some spring seeds this past fall, and I just, I hope Mother Nature is kind to us.
Yeah. Oh, maybe.
So who is the administrator tonight? Is that you, Kate? Or is it?
It's usually either me or Suzanne or Michelle, and we had a meeting on Saturday. We didn't talk about it. So at the moment, it's me.
So Michelle is our speaker tonight?
Michelle is going to tell us about, she's going to recap what we accomplished in 2021.
Sure. Mhm.
And I hope we'll also have some time to talk about some of the things we have already planned to do in 2022, and then maybe just discuss some of good ideas that we have and see what the level of interest is. So I don't have there's 8 of us online so far. One of the things that Suzanne brought up, she found interesting, we might want to think about doing, was a cemetery, maybe a tour of several cemeteries. Maybe less so in Texas than farther north, but in various parts of the United States, the cemeteries are really repositories of older plants that have kind of gone out of fashion, and whether they're natives or just well adapted. So we're kind of thinking about that as an idea.
Hmm.
And we had originally planned for the February meeting, instead of having a Zoom, to have a hands-on workshop on herbal remedies. And we've decided that the timing is not really all that great for a indoor meeting, and we'll hopefully reschedule that till in the summer.
Hmm.
Either Michelle or Suzanne joined, because I see we have a host.
Yes, it's Michelle.
Hey,
Hello. Yeah, my Zoom had to re-download or something, so.
well, you're not late. We have 8 minutes still.
That's really early for me.
It is. I'm impressed. Are you in Azle, or are you up north?
Yeah, I'm over at my mother's tonight.
Gonna be there tomorrow?
I am. Yes.
Can I come by and drop something off?
Yes, you can. You may.
Great. We'll get even with Vince. Michelle, did you plan to say anything about our activities we've planned for the first half of 2022?
I mean, I do have that in the presentation at the end, but I would like some help of fleshing it out a little bit.
Well, what better moment to try that than when we have people online that might have opinions?
Yes, exactly. So maybe when I get to that point, then I'll ask for input. And then also if you and Suzanne or Joanne or whoever else want to pipe in because I'm sure I forgot something. So
We'll be your backup.
yeah, thank you.
You on mute?
I hardly ever use the video anymore on meetings. So I'm like, how do I do that? This is the second time today I've used the video. So I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, I was always using the video. And then after a while, it's like no one else was. And I was like, eh. Then I don't have to, brush my hair or whatever.
Oh, those time-consuming chores.
I know. One thing that I think is funny, because if you think of like before you leave to go to a meeting or something, when you're going in person, I'll be like, all right, I'm gonna brush my hair and, brush my teeth and look in the mirror, whatever. But so before online presentations, I brush my teeth. Like, who's gonna even notice if I have pepper, between my front teeth? It's just a ritual, I guess.
Habit.
All right, I see some people I know. I think everyone.
I
Yeah,
don't see
also-
Suzanne.
Yeah, I think yeah, I don't see her on there. Also, I'm thinking, when we get to the end and ask for suggestions, if maybe you could help stimulate that conversation, but also take notes.
For sure, I will take notes.
down. But while we're waiting, does anyone have any suggestions in the chat of like whether they prefer some in-person hikes or field trips or I don't know, more Zoom? Yeah, or just suggestions of things to do. I see Dusty mentioned that he missed part of the cemetery talk, which I missed also, some cemetery chatter. And he's saying that those are some of the best spots to still find horned lizards and quails in rural cemeteries.
I don't think Dallas qualifies.
No. I know Suzanne and Michael Smith found, and whoever was on the hike with them this Saturday, found quail, or at least one quail up by the grasslands.
And apparently tame quail.
Yeah. An
Yes.
overly tame quail.
Yes,
Yeah.
one very lonely tame quail, I think, was wandering, looking for others of its kind.
Instead, he found you.
Instead, he found us. Yes.
And it wasn't at a cemetery. What didn't y'all say it was in the road?
It was
Grasslands.
walking up. It was walking up the 2-track road in Unit 71.
Mm-hmm.
So probably not a wild quail.
I don't think so.
Suzanne, I know 2 or 3 people who raise quails for the market, And I'm wondering, ones that get loose from those operations, what kind of percentage survive?
From what I've read, it's really small because they're just not conditioned to have the same instincts for survival as a wild-born quail.
Yeah.
So Michelle was telling me that there's a hunting dog training that goes on at the grasslands, and they release pen-raised quail for the dogs to practice. And so it's probably one of those that didn't get found by a dog or a hunter at the time and has just roamed around.
Uh,
We want to get his DNA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know many years ago, there was a man that lived kind of in that general area, and he was the person that worked with the Forest Service for the dog trial area on the grasslands. And I think he was raising pen raised quail, as part of that program to put them out on the southern unit. I don't know if he still lives there or does that, but no, I wouldn't be surprised if, it was just a pen raised quail from someone around. I can't even imagine that one would have made it from 29 to 71 without getting killed.
Yeah.
Want to start, Susan? Michelle, you want to start? It's after 7.
Yes. So,
So, welcome everyone to our January Zoom, where we traditionally have a guided tour of our main activities from the previous year. And I don't think I have to introduce Michelle to anybody on this list, but I will say how happy we are that you're doing this for us again this year. And we're all interested to hear what you have to say. So Michelle, please go ahead.
yeah, thank you. Yes. And as I was mentioning earlier, please type in. It'll probably be a really short presentation. So if you have comments, go ahead and put them in the chat or speak up. Because I feel like I may have forgotten a couple of things in my presentation, but beyond that, let's see, let me share my screen.
I remembered something else I did. So
oh yeah,
at least one more thing is on there.
yeah. So I mean, I obviously won't get it in this presentation, but at least, if you think of something or you have suggestions for 2022, that would be great. Okay, so let me share the screen and then get my presentation going. And then let me know if y'all can see the screen.
Yes.
Okay, I was like, oh my gosh, it can't be that it's slow internet. Okay, so
The subject of the picture, isn't that Suzanne?
yes. Yeah, so Suzanne gets to be the intro slide every year that I'm doing the year in review for Fort Worth NPAT, because this was such an awesome picture, and she was standing there looking across the vast prairie landscape. So I think that's a forward looking photo. So that's the subject of what we're going to talk about, is what we have achieved as a chapter for this year. Again, this year was challenging like 2020. And in fact, for me, 2020 and 2021 kind of blur together. And I can't, I like have trouble sorting out what things happened in which year, just because of everything that's been going on. So we always start each year off with a year in review presentation. So this one, yeah, it was 2021. So I did it online on Zoom. So pretty much all of these are going to be Zoom. I just try to cover everything we've accomplished. So in February, we had Don Kershaw. Hopefully many of you saw his presentation or know of him. He's on the state board of Native Prairies Association of Texas. He has a family farm down kind of southish of San Antonio. and their property is a Lone Star Land Steward Award winner. So I provided a link, or you can just Google it if you want to read and watch the video of their Land Steward Award. But basically, it's all the siblings of, his parents ended up owning the property, and they worked together with their family members. And then now it's a qualified volunteer site because they hold an easement, or NPAT holds an easement on their property. And so they do a lot of restoration. If you missed his presentation on Zoom, you can go to, I think we've got it now uploaded onto the YouTube channel for Native Prairies Association. And then in March, we had Ricky Linux. He's a retired NRCS rangeland ecologist. And we had him give his presentations on why creeks act the way that they do. And we recorded that and actually took it to the Parks Department and sent an email to several staff members, because we're working on a creek buffer policy, management and maintenance policy. And so I wanted them to have access to this presentation because it was a very good presentation that cities can benefit from viewing. And then in April, did What's Blooming. That's just kind of a general thing we try to do in April when the wildflowers are starting to bloom. And then Suzanne and I, we kind of interchange who gives that presentation. So also, if anyone is interested in giving presentations like that, Zoom or in person, you want to share your expertise and knowledge, we would welcome that. In May, we had Bruce Benz, who's a biology professor at Tex West. He gave a presentation on the population ecology of Silphium albiflorum, which is a white rosinweed at Tandy Hills Natural Area. And this is from a study that is kind of a long-term study that he and his students have been conducting at Tandy Hills. And that was a very interesting presentation as well. A little bit of it was over my head. Like he's like a pretty hardcore scientist. So, and then in June, we had a hybrid meeting. Donald Beard, who's the park superintendent of Caprock Canyon State Park, and he's also the head LEO law enforcement there at Caprock Canyon State Park. He was actually in Fort Worth, and so he wanted to present in person. So we had had a room at Tex West, and he presented there, and then also over Zoom. So I think by then a lot of people are still doing the Zoom versus coming in person. But that was very well received. And he, again, talked about the bison herd and managing the bison herd out there. So he's kind of like the lead wrangler of the bison herd. And then in July, Christina Moon, who was the park planner with City of Fort Worth in the Parks Department, she was my colleague. And she and I started in our park planning positions about the same time. She came to us from the Austin area as a private industry landscape architect, and started working for the City of Fort Worth. And immediately when we started talking, I realized, like, wow, she really knows her native plants. She knows medicinal uses of native plants, and she knows how to landscape and plan for landscapes of native plants. So I was really excited that she presented on herbal uses of native and prairie plants. So as a follow-up to that, and I'll mention this later on, is that we had scheduled to have an in-person presentation by Christina, because she basically, did her Zoom presentation. It would have been way better in person because she wanted interactive, like hands-on sampling and looking at some of the things that she was talking about. But due to COVID, we, just went ahead and did the Zoom presentation. So the follow-up was going to be this February, but we've ended up postponing it because of the recent surge of COVID. And we're looking at scheduling it in person in July at Russell Farm in Burleson, which is a really cool heritage farm. And in July, we could be inside, outside. So it should be a better fit than trying to do it in February, especially if we get February, whatever, Ice-mageddon again. And then August, we had a Zoom from Della Barbado. She's the Lawther Deer Park. Well, she is the NPAT Director of Education, but she's stationed out of and focuses a lot of her work at the Lawther Deer Park Prairie. And so she was giving an update about the education and outreach program. And I wish I would have put her data on here. She's paid staff through grants for Native Prairies Association of Texas, and she reaches so many school kids, even during the pandemic. And so we'd really like to have eventually a position up here in North Texas where that person does only education. So we've hired Carly Olicky. So I'll be talking about her in a minute, and she's outreach and stewardship. So her job also is outreach, but imagine if you had Carly doing outreach and stewardship, a lot of stewardship and conservation easements, and then we had another staff person who was doing all education, then oh my gosh, we could really, really accomplish even more up here in North Texas. And then in September, we had Carly. So she came, I forget, I think she came on board in June or maybe late May of this year. And we didn't want to have her give a presentation like 2 weeks into her new job. So we gave her until September and to come up with her presentation. So she gave a background of, how she came to be in Texas in this position. And then what is her vision for Native Prairies Association for the program of the North Texas Outreach and Stewardship Program. And again, these are all recorded and I think they're all up on YouTube by now. And then October, we didn't do an in-person or Zoom meeting because we did Prairie Seeker. So we're gonna trend away from doing monthly Zoom meetings and try to do more in-person things, so put our energy towards in-person activities that actually get people out on the prairies. This Prairie Seekers was at Leo Ranch. Leo Ranch. And then I'm going to talk about it in a minute also. And this was the first Prairie Seekers that was planned as kind of a combination of volunteers like Suzanne and Jean and Kate and Mary and Joanne and myself working with Carly to do the first Prairie Seekers. And then in November, we had Rehorning Texas, the historical introduction to restoring Texas horned lizards by Dusty Rhodes, who is a Native Prairies of Texas member. He does monthly membership donations to Native Prairies. And he is the author of the forthcoming book, Rehorning Texas. And he had a really mind-blowing presentation that was so thorough. I mean, it covered like every possible aspect of how, why horned lizards were where they are, how we might be able to restore them back to habitat, and what are some of those key things. And had a very lively conversation after his presentation. And then in December, we had the Marine Creek Land Scholars report on their prairie project. So this is an ongoing collaboration between the Marine Creek Land Scholars, which are Fort Worth, Eagle Mountain ISD, and Tarrant County College. So they have kind of a mentorship program that gets kids when they're, say, in 9th grade, and then they build up responsibility and experience all the way through their senior year. So from freshman to senior. And by the time they are seniors, then they're mentoring students, in grades lower than theirs. And the last couple of years have been weird because of the pandemic and because they were doing, they weren't doing in-person classes, but they were still able to do some experiments with the help of their teacher and professor mentors to on a seed ball project. And so really the main thing with that project is it's just getting the kids to think critically, to kind of set up experiments and try to follow them through using the scientific process. And again, because they weren't in person, it was a little bit more of a challenge. But these are the students from the Marine Creek Land Scholars, and that's at the TCC campus, Northwest campus overlooking the lake. Okay, now we're moving on to what I can't see my my header column. I think these are field trips. Let's see if I can get that to go to hide. No. Okay. Well, anyways, the bar is covering up my title.
But we can see it,
And-
Michelle. It's field trips.
Okay, field trip. I'm like, what did I put up there? So field trip. So in April, we went to the Skip Barnett ranch. And so as you can see, this is an amazing view from his property. He owns about 1,000 acres and he has it under a conservation easement. It was originally under Connemara Conservancy, and I think now it's under Texas Land Conservancy for the conservation easement. And I don't know if anyone's been up to his property. It has the Chisholm Trail went through it. So there are some ruts where, different, even wagons and stuff went through and kind of just worn down a path on his property. He's up there on Highway 380 between Decatur and Denton. And unfortunately, this is yet another part of North Texas that's seen an explosion in development, but in acreage development. And so he's becoming surrounded by rooftops. So eventually it's not going to be just a bunch of ranches out there. It's going to be his 1,000-acre ranch is going to essentially be the refugia for wildlife in that area and by a couple of years. And then August, we had a museum tour at the Sid Richardson Museum from director Scott Winterode, and it was called Picturing the American West. So you can see we were in there. There's a logical layout of the gallery to tell basically evolution of painting styles by Remington and a couple of other artists that were in there. And he was kind of interpreting all of that for us. And then afterwards, we went to, what was that, Flying Saucer, some outdoor place where we could talk about the tour and talk to each other and do some kick around some prairie ideas. So Savage Cabbage Bash, I think it was canceled. So Joanne can correct me if I'm wrong, but normally Joanne every year for years has been organizing the Savage Cabbage Bash.
Yes, it was. We were going to have our 5th annual Savage Cabbage Bash in 2020. Then we were going to have our 5th annual Savage Cabbage Bash in 2021. Luckily, Tarrant Regional Water District is going to they're going to promote it to more of their groups, and we're hoping that February 26th this year it will happen. We have the date set. If anybody is interested in coming out and yanking cabbage out, you can put your name in the chat, your email, or you can email me at fwnpat@gmail.com and I'll get it. And I will definitely add you to the list. I'm going to be using Young Women's Leadership Academy, and I'm going to try to get some other schools. And Tarrant Regional Water District is talking about doing a video possibly and inviting their Adopt a River people as well. So this is the first time they've ever actually had a committee meeting about it. And there are people assigned to help me do it. So I'm excited.
Yeah.
I just hope it happens.
Yeah, so this will be the third, fifth annual Cabbage Patch.
Yes, the third, fifth
The
annual.
third attempt, yeah.
And I also plan on having a friend that does the turtle survey at Pascal High School is going to come out and do the turtle survey as well. So
Oh,
it'll
yay.
be like an informational thing. And Eveline comes and sits at the table while and
Mhm.
talks about prairie. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so just make sure you put something on Facebook and Instagram if we do that.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, just so that we can keep current on that and for an upcoming newsletter if we get one out in time. And so I bet a couple of you thought that I had forgot about the Prairie Seekers training that we did in May. I didn't. I put it under the workshops. But so we did do an introduction training at LBJ National Grasslands, and we had a lot of people show up to that and well received. And so instead of going over, completely going over the protocol of Prairie Seekers, we've started to focus more on increasing the knowledge of participants. And so that's why in the future, for the next at least 4 more Prairie Seeker trainings, is going to be called Prairie Seekers Prairie Toolbox. And that's because we're helping to build skills, knowledge, confidence, all of that in participants. Let's see. So here, oh, sorry, I was wrong. It wasn't at LBJ. See, that's what I'm saying. I'm like mixing up 2020 and 2021. It was that private property at 2 different ranches that are up off of the Red River. And so, and Suzanne, I can't remember, did y'all do a Zoom Prairie Seekers presentation before the actual field this year?
I don't think we did.
Okay, maybe that's what I had the placeholder in there that I forgot to talk about. So yeah, so we do try to give some like a Zoom presentation before going out into the field, or we have in the past, so several times. So at these 2 properties, they were really different properties. Actually, I'm going to let Suzanne, if you don't mind, just give a quick overview of how you set this up.
Yes, we, let me turn on my video here. So this was the first time we'd ever done a Prairie Seekers and really looked at properties in the eastern cross timbers, which is, a grassland, but it's a post oak savanna grassland. And both of these properties are actually very close to each other. They're very close to the Red River. They're only about maybe 5 or 6 miles apart, private properties, but they've been managed in very different ways. Carol Clark has been restoring their family property there for a number of years, she and her husband, where David Stetler, he started out actually doing more like agricultural practices on his property, and only within the last 5 or 6, 8 years, something like that, he's been really working to restore it more to native grasslands. So it was just a really interesting comparative. We did both properties on the same day. We did one in the morning, and then we did David's in the morning, then we went to Carol's in the afternoon. And it was just really interesting to have that comparison of the different management types and different levels of where they were in their succession. So I thought it was a very interesting, informative training session.
Suzanne, I think the other thing that I found really useful, at least for formulating our thoughts about how to go forward, is that David Stetler's property, which we did in the morning, we did the traditional, here's a 30-meter circle, and there's a 100-step transect that you should identify the plants on. So we followed the methodology that we have in the past. But when we went to Carol's, probably because we had all just done that, but also largely because the biodiversity in Carol's Prairie was so stunning. I don't think we could have forced ourselves to simply jot down what we saw every one step. We were in the midst of a, it was rife with plants that many of us had never seen. So the contrast was not just the management styles in the two places, but in a way, in our approach to how to improve our skills in doing a prairie seekers training.
Yeah, I agree. When we got to Carol's, everybody just kind of started roaming because it was so interesting and really, really different. David's obviously was just a lot more lower succession and still a lot of non-native things that will fade out as the native longer, perennial plants take hold. And Carol's was already there, and interesting, unusual things had already started showing up at her property too. So it was really interesting, really a fun morning or a fun whole day. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that people spread out once we got over to Carol's place, like how I say what happens when you get a bunch of naturalists together. We can't like focus on any one thing. We're just like bouncing around everywhere with excitement and glee. And so I feel like
Yes.
that's what people were doing. And then in October, which is just, we just finished this one pretty recently, was the first in the Prairie Seekers Toolbox series. So this was number 1. And then we'll have 4 more, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But we did that at Leo Ranch, and this would have been Carly's first time to coordinate in her position the Prairie Seekers. And so that again was a really nice training where we were split into teams and rotated the teams around to look at different aspects of the ranch. And then we had a quick tour at the end of it with the ranch managers, talking to them about grazing and seeing a couple of different parts of their property. Let's see. Next. Okay, so then some other things with outreach is we have the newsletter, which I think everyone probably gets, and then the website and Facebook. We also have an Instagram, but I think we need someone a little bit younger to help us with Instagram, just because it's enough just to manage Facebook and the newsletter and the website. So if anyone's interested, we would appreciate it. And then we usually have the one North Texas Giving Day in September, and sometimes there are some other giving days that we participate in, but we were able to do some matches to help. As you know, Carly's position is funded through a grant or a donation from the Dixon Water Foundation, as well as from all of us. So we've raised money to match the Dixon Water Foundation's year 1. And then we have year 2 that we're going to be matching. So we're really excited that we raised $9,000-ish, which goes into this North Texas Outreach and Stewardship Program. And we're all super excited about having Carly here, because otherwise this is an all volunteer endeavor, and we've done really good with all the volunteers doing programming and hikes and outreach and all of that. But it really, in order for this to grow, we really needed someone in a paid position. So that was a pretty big deal that we raised that money, I think. Then also Amazon Smile. So if you buy things off of Amazon, you can assign a nonprofit to receive like a little percentage of your expenditures, or your purchases on Amazon can go to a nonprofit. So I, of course, always have my purchases donate towards Native Prairies Association. I did get a report and I forget what it said, but I think it was something like $60 or something. So at least it's not $60 out of my pocket. It was out of Amazon's or out of the sale. So, and then I know this, the volunteer hours is definitely under calculated. I just took who we know is volunteering and their time at $28.54 an hour is the national volunteer rate that they say a volunteer's time is worth that. It's like, wow, that's that's I guess figuring in if you were going to pay like insurance and benefits for a salaried employee. But that equals up to $16,374, which again is under calculated because I think it's probably maybe closer to 20,000. And then I just wanted to recognize some people that have helped. And I think Suzanne, she corrected me on spelling David's name. I think I didn't get the correction in this PowerPoint presentation, so I apologize to David. So Jean Erickson and Mary Curry, I didn't have a picture of Mary, have helped a lot tremendously with prairie seekers over the last probably 2 years, especially. And then of course, Suzanne and Kate have been organizing prairie seekers. And so now I feel like we have like a really good team of people who are experts who know a lot about prairies and about the plants and animals, the flora and fauna that you would find in prairies, especially in north central Texas. So I wanted to acknowledge that. Then Joanne is our tireless outreach and special events person, her along with Evelyn, go out to these events, or Eveline, go out to these events whenever we have in-person events. Kate, and then Erin and Suzanne. And then we have Lorraine Gluck, who is our, what is she? Not treasurer, vice president for our chapter, but she moved to New Mexico, so she hasn't been able to be present to help. But she was helping us before she moved. And also, if anyone is interested in serving on the board, either the chapter or the state board, please let us know, because there's always room for people to help out and show your expertise and your passion. We don't pigeonhole anyone into anything, but definitely appreciate any help anyone wants to contribute. So for upcoming for 2022, again, I had mentioned Christina's presentation would be in person, and we are rescheduling it. We're not having it in February. We're looking at July out at Russell Farm in Burleson. Again, that's a really, really cool heritage farm that's run by the city of Burleson. They have an art gallery, they have meeting space, and they have really cool, fun staff who are excited about NPAT. They're excited about native plants and art and blending all of that together. And then we're working with Diane Weatherby. She's talking to or planning to talk to some developers up in like the Denton County area who have done conservation developments. And so we would like to schedule a tour of a conservation development with a developer. And actually, if we can coordinate this, would want to open that up to municipalities in the planning department, because we want to, I'm sorry.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I think if we can get something like this scheduled, it could become maybe an annual thing, and that where we can show that there are other ways to develop. If the whole countryside is going to get developed, maybe there are other ways to save some open space that's not like cities forking over money or nonprofits trying to raise money to buy property. And then on May 14th, we're going to have part 2 of the series of the Prairie Seekers Prairie Toolbox. That'll be again at Leo Ranch, so that any participants who were there in the fall can come back and see what it looks like in the spring. But it's going to be open to everyone. So you don't have to have gone to series 1 in order to go to series 2. And-
Michelle, just stop there just a second. We had a question from Lisa about who is the intended audience. She was under the impression it was the more recent ones were just for new recruits, not the folks who'd already done it once or twice. But the point I want to make, particularly when you just said you're all welcome, is it's a limited size group because we want to ensure the correct ratio of trainees to trainors. And we've also started charging for it. So yes, anyone can participate, but you will have to register to get one of those slots, which are highly coveted.
Yes, exactly. And, because it's trying to build, skills, it'll be logical, what the topics are, but we didn't want to develop this the same way as like Master Naturalist, where, you must commit to all 5. And then if we just wanted it to be where people feel like they can join. We don't want to preclude anyone from doing this because of having mandatory attendance. So, but yes, it'll be a first come, first serve registration. Let's see. And then this one, this is like our, like Joanne was saying on Savage Cabbage Bash, the 3rd, 5th time or whatever. We were gonna do the 4R winery bus tour in, I guess that was 2020. We had it scheduled and then the pandemic hit. And so we canceled it and we thought, oh, we'll do it in 2021, same thing. Then we were gonna do it in 2022. Now I'm just like, forget it. We'll try to do it in 2023 because the idea is to ride on a bus, and I don't know how many people will be super excited about that. But it's a great place to go, and I look forward to that field trip. And then, so we have some other hikes and possibly ranch tours or property tours that we are working on, but I don't have the details of them yet. And this is where I was hoping that if anyone has ideas, I haven't been looking at the chat, but if anyone has any suggestions or they, have somewhere they would like us to look into, or say maybe even someone on, here has property or has a contact, if you would like to suggest that, because we want to make sure that we're not just always going back to the same places all the time. It's good to go back and see things seasonally, but we also want to bring in different parts of the DFW area that's within the Fort Worth chapter's reach.
So, Michelle, we've had one question and I absolutely love it. The question is about Rock Creek Park. When is the city going to let people go there? And then the question also elaborated, wouldn't that be interesting for prairie seekers for NPAT?
Yes. And
so
yes.
Tell us, please.
Yes, I agree. So the city does own Rock Creek Ranch Park now. And internally within the Parks Department, we're discussing leading tours. What's that going to look like? It's not necessarily open to the public yet, but believe me, I've already talked to the department about, hey, as soon as we're ready for public access, then I want to have volunteers go in, however we do that, and inventory and survey and scour that park. So I think that would be a great idea to schedule a prairie seekers there. I'm still waiting for myself to be able to go to the new park. So, but as soon as I get the go ahead from the park department, then yes. And right now, we're working on not an adoption agreement, but a agreement with Brit so that they can take their interns out there to train them and do surveys. And I would like cross timbers master naturalists and NPAT volunteers. And it doesn't have to be an organized go out there. I mean, once it's open to the public, it's open. But I really we have about 5 years before the city does a master plan for the park. And it would be nice to have the flora and fauna documented well at that park, because that might guide, you know, what areas turn into soccer fields or not. It would just inform the parks department of what's out there. So yes, I agree with
And
that.
so we all assume that you will just send up the alert as soon as it's possible.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. We have a meeting, I can't remember if it's this week or next week internally, where we are going to talk about like access to the park. I think there are some areas that you can't just drive into and over to whatever, but as soon as I can get out there and really scour it, once I know that I'm going to be able to go out there, then I can probably just send a shout out as well, and anyone who wants to meet me and go in, because right now you have to have a key. So
We have a couple of additional questions.
Mhm.
Becky Bertoni asks whether we would be interested to go to a property by Lake Ray Roberts, there by Sanger, Ray Roberts State Park. So that's a suggestion.
Mhm.
I'm not familiar with it personally, but if it has grass growing on it, I'm pretty interested.
Yeah. So I'm not seeing the chat right now, but is the suggestion to go to Ray Roberts State Park or go to private property in that area, or both?
Looks specifically, she says Ray Roberts State Park near Sanger,
Okay.
Texas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And I have captured that. And Lisa also mentioned that Kim Olson had volunteered we could tour at her ranch near Mineral Wells.
Ooh. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, I think that's good. We don't intentionally focus on Fort Worth Prairie only. I mean, we have some western cross timber savanna and some eastern cross timbers, little pocket prairies. And so we try to spread it around. So those suggestions are really good because it's getting into these other prairie habitats that aren't, you know, say what we see when we go to Leo Ranch or when we go to U.S. Army Corps of
Grasslands.
Engineers at Benbrook Lake. So we want to offer a diversity, and we also want to offer field trips and hikes that aren't always just right in Fort Worth. So I think those are really good suggestions.
And Diane has added a comment simply that Jeff Quayle has led hikes at Ray Roberts State Park that apparently helped her fall in love with the prairie there. So now I'm even
nice.
more intrigued. There's more than just
Yeah.
grass.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we actually did a field trip that was led by, or we met the resource managers at Ray Roberts on the North Unit, the Johnson Creek unit, and they gave us a tour. What was that, 3 years ago, Michelle? They gave us a tour of areas that they had been doing active ecological restoration on. So we definitely are interested in Ray Roberts area.
Might have been even 4 years ago.
Might have. I've lost total track of time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's like, oh, was it 2019? Or, I mean, it's like pre, and what were you doing before the pandemic?
Yeah.
Like that's your calendar.
Yeah, Diane also commented it would be good for us to do something at Leela, and I've been thinking the same thing.
Oh yeah, definitely, Leela.
Yeah. So if anyone, I mean, I know we all have contacts at Leela, but if someone wants to reach out to Leela or City of Louisville staff and see if they would lead a hike or a tour. Because that's really probably the
We are
better
a
thing
teacher
for
to
us than
do.
like me going up to Leela and trying to lead a tour. Is like let the staff do it. So when they're available, and when they're available, then we can coordinate with them.
I'm gonna be talking to Tiara anyway. I'll bring that up when I talk to her.
And any other ideas? I really enjoyed going on to private property because I think that helps. In a way, it gives me hope because I can see what public land is protected and managed, but when you actually see people, private landowners doing some of that conservation work, I think that's also good to see.
I also think the other question I would kind of am interested in is a breakout of, so, there are hikes and then there are trainings. And often we're somewhere in the middle, but I wonder if people have a preference for let's just go wander, let's go see what we can find, or
So
a little more structure so we better understand what we're looking at and the direction it's going in.
I actually, this might be a good time to bring this up to the group here. I miss those too. I miss just walking around and looking at stuff. And one of the things that made me fall in love with the prairie was the going there every month. At the same, we had hikes at a prairie, I was trying to say, very close to Rock Creek Park, which makes me super excited that we got that piece of property. But I was wanting to do at least a seasonal hike at the Chisholm Trail Community Center to try to get people that are in that neighborhood, number one, and then also offer it for native plant people, native prairies, I mean, or anybody that wants to come out. But I was thinking about having it be an educational thing and offering an activity that families could take for their kids and charging like $5 a family for whoever, if it's one person comes out, it's $5. If you have 6 people in your family and they all come out, it's still $5. And then give that activity to the families that come out, or maybe even do the activity with them or whatever. But do you think, polling this group, do you think that would be a good thing for us to do? Would people want to be like a donation to NPAT to come out and do a group hike? We would have some people there that knew things, but it would also be a time for us to just wander around and look at stuff, ourselves as well. So chime in if you think that would be a good idea, because I was missing those hikes as well.
I think there's only one way to find out is to schedule it.
Schedule it and do it. Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And
think
so
I will.
Joanne, I would just say also, Alexis Chernovsky.
I'm gonna talk to her.
Yeah, talk to her because now Cross Timbers Master Naturalist, through Alexis's work and persistence, has an adoption agreement with the Parks Department now.
Oh, we do. Very cool.
Yes, that we just finished that. It's final. I mean, it's official now.
Oh,
So
cool.
within that, what they've been doing since the pandemic is just picking up trash and not doing the interpretive end of it. But under the adoption agreement, it's open. It lists a bunch of different activities that could be under that adoption, and one of them's like
I was
hikes,
planning
the
on
docent
talking to her.
program.
I really would like to get a Facebook group going that would get people in the neighborhood posting on it, but would need some other people's help. This has been a dream of mine that I haven't been able to get to with everything else that's going on.
Yeah, that's
I
like
know
all of
it.
us.
Need to talk to her.
So, well, so I just kind of skimmed the chat. And I haven't read all of them, but I think Kate probably pulled all of them out. So, is there anything else? I think there's some good stuff in the chat. Like I wanted to stop and read it.
So I think the last comment from Dave is the right place to end. I like the hikes, get us out.
Yeah.
Oh, 9 natives. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up, Becky. I sent an email out to, gosh, about 25 people, obviously at a bad time. I think Carol Clark was the only one that I remember replying to it. So I'm going to try that again. I'm going to send out I think I'll just start with just the email, not the email, the YouTube presentation that Houston gave us, just for people to look at, and then try to see how many people are interested in getting on the 9 Natives Committee. This would be a group that would come up with 9 natives to sell kind of as a package, not maybe sell, but well, possibly to recommend to people that are trying to plant native plants. So it would be a group of 9 shade plants and a group of 9 prairie plants that we would offer information about the plants for people that live within the DFW area. So we would want to work with cities, native plant societies. This could be a really big deal, but I think we just need to get a committee going on, working on it. So that's the goal. That's what the 9 natives for. And if you're interested in that, you can also put that out.
So the Houston guys have gone a little further. They've also been working with the plant growers that supply the nurseries in their area.
That's the plan. That's the plan. So we want to actually, they started with a contest and to try to get landscape architects involved, as well as trying to get propagators to grow the plants, because it doesn't really help to have the list of plants if you can't find them anywhere.
Exactly.
So it could be a really big deal. I'm hoping to get cities working on it, and with me working with Tarrant Regional Water District, I know they're interested in it as well. So it's just a ongoing thing that's going to be coming up. Susan, send me your email and I will put you on my list. And Becky, I think you're already on it.
And then I just sent a response, but I'll just also say that if you're interested in Chisholm Trail, then reach out to Alexis. If you don't have Alexis's contact information, then send me an email and then I'll, put you in touch with Alexis. But to me, that's really exciting because now it's like an official adopted project that's, a Cross Timbers Master Naturalist project. And sanctioned by the Parks Department officially, because when we started it, I had it under the Nature Center, but it really needs to be, it's not the Nature Center, so it needs to be under the Parks Department. And then, as Kate was saying, a closing remark is get out on the prairie, get us out there. It's good for our souls. So that's why we're trying to kind of restructure our outreach to be more out on the prairies and maybe less on Zoom every single month. So with that, thank y'all for joining us. Thank you for listening to me blather. And Kate, do you have anything else? Just keep an eye on the newsletter and social media because we'll be posting upcoming events.
Thanks so much for doing this every year, Michelle. You
absolutely
do a lot.
You put a bow on it for us.
Yeah, you're welcome. We actually accomplished a lot, so it's like it's really good to have it in a PowerPoint so we realize what all we've achieved, even when we feel like we've just been sitting in our houses with our heads under our pillows.